in the forest for 30 years, working among the people. He's upset and extremely apologetic. There was a major miscommunication, he says again and again, which usually never happens. I was supposed to have arrived at the main camp on the first night, but someone dropped the baton. We made you wait, we made you walk so much, we ran all the way when the message came that you were here. I said it was okay, that I'd come prepared to walk and wait and listen. It's a few hours walk to the camp. It's getting dark when we arrive. There are several layers of sentries and concentric circles of patrolling. There must be 100 comrades lined up in 2 rows. Everyone has a weapon and a smile. They begin to sing Lal Lal Salam, Lal Lal Salam. Aane wale saathiyon ko Lal Lal Salam. Red salute to the comrades who have arrived. It was sung sweetly as though it were a folk song about a river or a forest blossom, with the song, the greeting, the handshake, the clenched fist. Other than that, a large blue chilli spread out on the floor about 15 feet square. There are no signs of a camp. This one has a jilly roof as well. It's my room for the night. I was either being rewarded for my day's walking or being pampered in advance for what lay ahead, or both. Either way, it was the last time in the entire trip I was going to have a roof over my head. Over dinner, I meet Comrade Narmada in charge of the Krantikari Adivasi Mahila Sangathan, which means the Revolutionary Indigenous Women's Association, which has 90,000 members, who has a price on her head. Comrade Saroja of the PLGA, who is only as tall as her SLR. Comrade Mase, which means black girl in Gondi, who has a price on her head too. Comrade Rupi, the tech wizard. Comrade Raju, who's in charge of the division I've been walking through. Between us, we speak Gondi, Haldi, Telugu, Punjabi and Malayalam. Only Mase speaks English, so we all communicate in Hindi. Comrade Mase is tall and quiet and seems to have to swim through a layer of pain to enter the conversation. But from the way she hugs me, I can tell she's a reader and that she misses having books in the jungle. She will tell me her story only later when she trusts me with her grief. Bad news arrives as it does in this jungle. A runner with biscuits, which are handwritten notes on sheets of paper folded and stapled into little squares. There's a bag full of them, like chips, news from everywhere. The police have killed 5 people in Omnar village, 4 from the militia and 1 ordinary villager. On the radio there's news about the Home Minister's meeting with Chief Ministers of the states affected by, quote, left-wing extremism. The Chief Ministers of Jharkhand and Bihar are being demure and haven't attended. Everyone sitting around the radio laughs. Around the time of elections they say, right through the campaign and then maybe a month or 2 after the government is formed, mainstream politicians all say things like, Naxals are our children. You can set your watch to the schedule of when they will change their minds and grow fangs and start to kill.
So one of the sentences that you said that you heard a lot is, we give away our lives but never our land. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, you know, before I went into the forest and marched with the comrades for many, many years, I mean more than 10 years ago, I was writing about perhaps the biggest non-violent Gandhian anti-dam movement, the Narmada Bachao Andolan. I think, in fact, I'm not sure, but I think I've spoken here about it many years ago, in this auditorium, maybe. But as I said, just dams alone have displaced more than 30 million people. So and today with the neoliberal economic policies, the biggest issue that is causing unrest across the country is displacement and the takeover of people's lands. In the Narmada movement, people would stand in their homes while the river rose and basically, to protest in those ways. It just didn't matter. The dams just kept going up. Today, they are building about 100 dams in the Himalayas in Arundhati Pradesh, which is a very thinly populated area. And the trouble is that in a place like this, in Dandakaranya, when it's mining companies that want to take over your land, if you're organized, you can defend your land. But if it's a question of a dam, let's say the biggest dam on the Narmada Valley project, the Sardar Sarovar Dam, the dam is being built in Gujarat, which is a completely fascist state. But the submergence, the reservoir is in the other states, in Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. And it's not as though people are coming to take over your land. The thing you love the most, your river is rising to take over the land. You can't shoot the river. You can't blow up the river. How do you fight a dam? You can fight it if you prevent it from being built in the first place. But if it's being built, they can secure the site, militarily, as they are in the northeast. So, but if you look at the history of struggle for land in India, what is really sad is that in the 1970s, well, let's say after India became independent, land reform was one of the biggest things on the agenda of the new government, which was, of course, obviously subverted by all the politicians who were upper caste people, who were landowners, who were what we call zamindars. So they put in so many caveats in the legal system that absolutely no redistribution really happened. But then in the 1970s, when this Naxalite movement started, when the first people rose up, it was about the redistribution of land. It was saying land to the tiller, and it was crushed. The army was called out. The Indian government, which calls itself democratic, never hesitates to call out the army. So the army was called out, this movement was crushed. But today, people have completely forgotten the idea of redistribution. They are just fighting to be allowed to hold on to what little they have. And we call that progress, because the Home Minister says he wants 70% of India to live in cities. That means he wants 500 to 600 million people to move. How do you do that unless you become a military state? How do you do that unless you build big dams and big thermal projects and have nuclear power? So really, in so many ways, we have regressed. And even the most radical politics, like this that I'm writing about, is still about people who are privileged enough to have land. But there are millions and millions of people who don't have land, who now just live as pools of underpaid wage labor on the edges of these huge megalopolises that make up India now. So the politics of land in one way is radical, and in another way it's left out the poorest people, because they are just out of the equation. We don't talk about justice anymore. None of us do. We just talk about human rights or survival. We don't talk about redistribution. I mean, in America, 400 people own the wealth of more than half of the American population. So we should be not saying tax the rich, we should be saying take their money and redistribute it.
ask it anyway because I love this sentence you wrote. Justice, that grand, beautiful idea, has been whittled down to meet human rights.
Yeah, and of those George Bush said a few will do. Yeah, I mean, that is right. You know, I actually hate this word human rights. You know, what does it mean? What does it mean? You know, the idea of justice, and that's why when I was talking about the fact that we can't just isolate the idea of environmental matters. We have to have, at the keystone of the art has to be the idea of justice, you know. So it has to be, because all these things eventually do coincide. In India, still, I mean, I would still say that environmentalists as a group are pretty reviled by people's movements because they are elitist. You know, they are the ones who want the national parks emptied so that you can save the tiger. They don't understand the meaning of justice at all. You know, so in fact, these wars, like the one that I'm talking about, are battles in which people are also part of the ecosystem. I mean, later on, when I read you more, I will talk about the fact that, you know, as a person who stands on this side of the line with this bandwidth of resistance movements, I do turn around and ask the comrades some questions, such as, will you leave the bauxite in the mountain? You know, today, among the biggest battles that's been fought in India is over the extraction of bauxite, which is the ore that makes aluminium, which is at the center of the military-industrial complex. And bauxite is the process. We have something like $4 trillion worth of bauxite in the mountains of Orissa and Chhattisgarh. And bauxite mountains are beautiful mountains. They are flat-top mountains. Porous, bauxite is a porous rock. And when it rains, those bauxite mountains absorb the water. They're like water tanks. And then they let the water out through their toes and they irrigate the plains. And for mining companies who have bought the bauxite for a small royalty to the Indian government, and they've already traded it on the futures market. So for local people, the bauxite in the mountain is the source of their life and their future and their religion and everything. And for the aluminum company, the mountain is just a cheap storage facility, you know. So it has to come out. They've already sold it, so it has to come out, either peacefully or violently. And so now the Indian government, the largest democracy in the world, is planning to call out the army in central India to fight the poorest people in the world.
You mentioned earlier Gandhian tactics, and
why are you smiling?
And you said that Gandhian satyagraha is a kind of political theater. In order for it to be effective, it needs a sympathetic audience, which villagers deep in the forest don't have. When a posse of 800 policemen lay a cordon around a forest village at night and begin to burn houses and shoot people, will a hunger strike help? Can starving people go on a hunger strike? And do hunger strikes work when they're not on TV?
Yeah, I said that, I admit. See, I think that when we were talking earlier about different strategies of resistance and the overground and the underground and things, these are very live debates in India right now, not just between the government or academic, but even between resistance movements. There's very real tension because sometimes an armed guerrilla action can be extremely irresponsible. You know, it can go and do something which invites the kind of repression from the state or from even, let's say, you know, the fascist Hindu militias who are also operating on behalf of the state. A lot of the Indian government's violence and repression is outsourced to the mob. It's not always acting as the state, you know. So there are these very real tensions, and often, you know, academics or journalists or these, you know, moronic anchors in TV studios, they will, you know, initiate a debate based on, you know, is violence moral or immoral? You know, SMS your answer to the studio now. But actually people don't necessarily function like that. You know, you can be a Maoist in the forest and a Gandhian on the street and a, you know, hunger striker. You can change identities depending on what suits you tactically. You don't have to, it's not like you've got to swear to be either this thing or that thing or the other thing, necessarily. Some people do, some people don't. But I think what happens in India is that this debate is, there's something false about it, you know, because it's infused with a kind of false morality. After all, if people from the middle class were to support, I mean, it's an oxymoron, they won't, but supposing they were to support that fight, then I can understand you saying, okay, let's all get together and, you know, go on a hunger strike. But if you're going to distance yourself from that village that has been surrounded by 1,000 policemen and is being burned, then it's immoral to try and lecture to those people how they should protect themselves. You know? I just want to read a little bit about that. Which it's a part of this essay which got me into a lot of delicious trouble. We're moving in single file now. Myself and 100 senselessly violent, bloodthirsty insurgents. I looked around at the camp before we left. There are no signs that almost 100 people had camped here except for some ash where the fires had been. I cannot believe this army. As far as consumption goes, it's more Gandhian than any Gandhian, and has a lighter carbon footprint than any climate change evangelist. But for now, it even has a Gandhian approach to sabotage. Before a police vehicle is burnt, for example, it is stripped down and every part is cannibalized. The steering wheel is straightened out and made into a Bharmar barrel. The Rexine upholstery stripped and used for ammunition pouches. The battery for solar charging. The new instructions from the High Command are that captured vehicles should be buried and not cremated, so they can be... Should I write a play, I wonder? Gandhi, get your gun. Or will I be lynched? We're down so that all I can see in its circle of light are Comrade Kamla's bare heels in her scuffed black chappals, showing me exactly where to put my feet. She's carrying 10 times more weight than I am, her backpack, a rifle, a huge bag of provisions on her head, one of the large cooking pots, and 2 shoulder bags full of vegetables. The bag on her head is perfectly balanced, and she can scramble down slopes and slippery rock pathways without so much as touching it. She's a miracle. It turns out to be a long walk. I'm grateful to the history. Okay, that's referring to something else. It's the most wonderful thing, walking in the forest at night. and I'll be doing it night after. In the forest for 30 years, working among the people. He's upset and extremely apologetic. There was a major miscommunication, he says again and again, which usually never happens. I was supposed to have arrived at the main camp on the first night, but someone dropped the baton. We made you wait, we made you walk so much, we ran all the way when the message came that you were here. I said it was okay, that I'd come prepared to walk and wait and listen. It's a few hours walk to the camp. Meet Comrade Narmada in charge of the Krantikari Adivasi Mahila Sangathan, which means the Revolutionary Indigenous Women's Association, which has 90,000 members. Who has a price on her head. Comrade Saroja of the PLGA, who's only as tall as her SLR. Comrade Mase, which means black girl in Gondi, who has a price on her head too. Comrade Rupi, the tech wizard. Comrade Raju, who's in charge of it's getting dark when we arrive. There are several layers of sentries and concentric circles of patrolling. There must be 100 comrades lined up in 2 rows. Everyone has a weapon and a smile. They begin to sing Lal Lal Salam, Lal Lal Salam. Aane wale saathiyon ko Lal Lal Salam. Red salute to the comrades who have arrived. It was sung sweetly as though it were a folk song about a river or a forest blossom. With the song, the greeting, the division I've been walking through. Between us we speak Gondi, Haldi, Telugu, Punjabi and Malayalam. Only Mase speaks English, so we all communicate in Hindi. Comrade Mase is tall and quiet and seems to have to swim through a layer of pain to enter the conversation. But from the way she hugs me, I can tell she's a reader and that she misses having books in the jungle. She will tell me her story only later when she trusts the handshake, the clenched fist. Other than that, a large blue chilli spread out on the floor about 15 feet square. There are no signs of a camp. This one has a jilly roof as well. It's my room for the night. I was either being rewarded for my day's walking or being pampered in advance for what lay ahead, or both. Either way, it was the last time in the entire trip I was going to have a roof over my head. Over dinner, I